So I think I will have to start because yes, I have the to honor to have the responsibility for this project, which results we are going to present today. The project was on communication practices of knowledge creation in by the creative communities of St. Petersburg. So our presentation will highlight the most important results of this project. Unlike the presentation we made 2 weeks ago with Alexandra, which was already a development of these results, this one will present these particular results. Not all of them, of course, but a bit. Okay, so yes, I have to say some words about the theoretical background. So how we came to this project was our idea to deeper understand knowledge and the nature of knowledge and how it is created and how it is linked to communication, and the suggested concepts and understanding of knowledge was like this. So it is a network of relations between psychic systems which get structurally coupled, and these relations get recurrently created and recreated through communication in some certain environment or context. Understood like this, knowledge is of course something collective, very grounded and very linked to social interaction and very contextually dependent, so to say ground-rooted, micro-level kind of things. So this is the reason, this understanding of knowledge is the reason. Okay, so this is just the scheme of knowledge creation process. Because understood like that, knowledge appears to be something constantly generated, constantly changing, and so it has this very important time dimension, this knowledge creation process. This is like a sort of visualization of collective knowledge creation process, showing the interlinkages between individual psychic structures, emotional energy, interpersonal communication, which take place in a common experience space. I won't go into details. There are some publications which you can, I think, easily find in English and in Russian as well. Okay, so this kind of understanding of knowledge brought us to the necessity if we want to empirically study knowledge seen like that, we have to. It is hardly possible analyzing, pure knowledge and knowledge produced by scientists as it is originally done by the sociology of knowledge and knowledge studies in general. So we had to look for a different, empirical subject for this kind of study, and that's why we decided to focus on artists. And as we understand knowledge as something collective, we decided to focus on not just single artists, but the creative communities who work together, who have who are very linked to the material world, who work with materials, who interact actively with the city and the city space, and who are involved in a very intense and affective, emotionally very effective kind of interaction between themselves.
Okay, thus
the conditions for knowledge creation for most for highest productivity of knowledge creation would be in place. So that's why we hope to find very to highlight the practices, to have the very clear view of the practices of knowledge creation, which could be observable and thus described and analyzed. From here.
You can give the floor to me, okay. But before we go to the next slide, I would just once again draw attention to the fact that when we are speaking about creative communities, we mean artistic communities. That is a very important moment, because sometimes you find in scientific literature the interpretations of creative communities as neighborhoods in urban environments that are involved by artistic groups and individual artists in the process of co-creation, and therefore they start becoming creative communities. In our case, however, there was groups of artists that combine in their structure both the features of communities of practice, because they have shared practices of artworks creation and discussion, and a very high level of emotional and expressive communication. Okay, now some words about our empirical research. As we were told, the major research focus was creative communities, those who are working in St. Petersburg, and we were especially interested in such communities who shared some working place or exhibition place, and we also looked at how they communicate with other representatives of art world, such as, for example, other artists or galleries or curators, and cultural mediators of different kind, and broader publics. And we also wanted to know whether their artistic work does transform the urban space. As to the general project, the key question to answer was about the type of communicative practices that bring creative communities to knowledge creation. However, in this very presentation, we'll kind of narrow our focus and talk about the key features that shape the unique combinations of knowledge generation practices that our investigated creative communities have. And a couple of words about what we've been doing in the field work. We've chosen the research strategy of multiple case study as the basis, because we wanted to look at the variety of different communicative practices and relations to urban space in different art groups. As to the methods, we used a range of qualitative sociological techniques, including in-depth interviews with artists, as well as participant observation in different situations, such as, for example, exhibitions or working studios or informal communication of the artists. And finally, we've done some text analysis. And for our further research, we've chosen 4 cases. Those are 4 creative communities from St. Petersburg that were very different in almost everything, although of course there were also some things in common, at least the fact of their belonging to the contemporary Petersburg art world. Here on the market we don't see so many art communities. So starting with the snowballing techniques, we actually covered the majority of them that we have now in St. Petersburg. But in fact they differ both in scale and in structure, in ideological orientation and in professional background of the members. And of course the artistic style in those communities is also very different, which my colleagues tried to show you last time. And now I'll tell you a bit about our cases to kind of contextualize you in what's happening in our field. The first community we looked at is called Kuchnia, or the kitchen, to be translated into English. It is a quite small community, even a microgroup. Its members being closely connected by friendships, and the majority of them also have shared educational and socio-cultural backgrounds. 5 or 6 of them just were students at the same art institution. And of course, because of those friendships and shared past, the in-group relations are very emotionally loaded. As to the leadership in the group, it has one recognized leader who actually established the community and also combines the work of artists with the work as a curator for the whole group. And what is very important for this case is the shared working space, because all the guys are working not even in the same studio, but in the same room, thus constantly observing each other, which promotes constant face-to-face interaction and cooperation. And also such special location provides certain special benefits, to use the term of Pierre Bourdieu, because the studio is very central. It is located in the very historical center of the city, close to other artistic platforms and institutions. And even in the same building where the art group works, they have other creative initiatives and designers and cinephiles and whatnot. And for this group, making art message clear for the publics is very important. But interestingly, the publics are understood very narrowly as a close circle of well-prepared spectators, at best colleagues, and other representatives of the art world. And what is also very important for this community is their deliberate attempts to play by the rules of the contemporary art market. They are very reflective about how to present themselves in the market, and they instrumentally promote themselves by active networking, strategic choice of legitimate exhibition platforms, and they are talking about that in interviews very often. Quite the contrary, our second case, the parasite, has a very different ideology that has much more in common, I think, with those communities that were described in the previous presentation. It is a quite long existing community with a very heterogeneous composition, because it both has old and younger artists, those who have already achieved professional success and recognition, and those who are just starting their careers. And in addition, there are subgroups within the community, which of course provide certain tensions, but simultaneously emotional loaded relations in the core. As to the leadership, here we have 2 leaders, an older artist of authority and a younger artist that is now successfully integrating in the market of contemporary art, which also reflects the clashes within the community. This group also has a shared space, or it is an exhibition space, where they organize exhibitions every 2 weeks. Every time a new one, which of course favors regular face-to-face interactions, including the discussion of art objects that they produce. This group demonstrates constant reflection on the possibilities to problematize everyday norms of urban life and life in general. And what they are doing is trying to challenge and even exploit those routines by means of irony and even trash, as you probably see at the slides. They correspondingly also show demonstrative disregard of the values and norms constituting the institutions of art world. They even choose the idea of parasitizing on other art institutions and platforms as the core of the identity. Another instrument they use is deliberate, exaggerated simplicity of their artistic language. Unlike the previous group, this community demonstrates attempts to appropriate and reappropriate the material and symbolic space of the city, which they do by various performances and interventions. The third group is probably the most famous, both in Russia and especially abroad. It is a community with a long story, and it is integrated by time-tested friendships and cooperation relations, and it also has an unbelievably stable membership. In the last years, since the establishment of the group, the composition has officially never changed. Interestingly, friendships doesn't necessarily mean peaceful communication. People in the group always quarrel, but they demonstrate a well-reflected impact of quarrels and reconciliations onto the creative process. Stable leadership is typical for this group, one formal leader taking over the functions of control, supplemented by situational project-oriented leadership coming from other members. Unlike other three cases, this group doesn't have any localization in physical space. It is even split between two cities, St. Petersburg and Moscow. But this deficiency of spatial proximity is compensated by a very intense communication on the internet, where they produce their own shared space of knowledge. This community is also characterized by a very deep philosophical grounding of creative processes and products. And being very left-wing, very critical, they also have a very explicit political position, showing open criticism against authorities. They are also very much oriented to participatory activities, trying to involve different disadvantaged groups in the process of co-creation. And they even attempt to bring their projects into the public space of cities, understood both literally as physical space and metaphorically as public discourse. Finally, this group shows sufficient awareness of institutional norms and values of the art market, but they are very critical towards those norms and values, and historically they got more recognition coming from foreign artists and broader publics than in the Russian art world. And finally, the group Непокоренные 17, who chose the name after the avenue where the studio is located, that can be translated as the unsubdued. I think this connotation was also important for them. This group is basically characterized by a very strong orientation towards artistic norms and values, which makes other communities blame them for a very pragmatic approach to art and a high level of commercialization, which they themselves, of course, deny, declaring themselves to be non-commercial contemporary artists. It is a community of nearly 13 to 14 members, but it is very hard to calculate because the rotation at the periphery is very prompt, although the core is stable. It is built by a group of people who are also connected by relations of friendship. As to leadership, they have two explicit leaders, the founders of the studio, but some managerial functions are also taken over by the curator. They also have a shared working space. However, unlike in the kitchen, here artists occupy separate rooms and always share such spaces as a reception room or the roof where they sometimes organize picnics or celebrate birthdays. And now let us turn to how we analyze them. We thought that when looking at the communications developing within the communities and outside the communities, we can figure out some features that describe this process. And we actually marked out several such features that I will describe just one after another. The first of the characteristics is the orientation towards artistic norms and values. As you probably see the slide, here we look at the extent to which both the form and the content of practices are associated with norms and regulations of the art world. And here we'll look at more obvious cases of a very high level of reflection about how to act at the art market showed by the artists from the kitchen. As you see from the quotations positioned at the slide, people perfectly realize that creating the images is very important task and are ready to sacrifice the immediate success and financial benefits instead looking into the future. In the second case, in the second quotation, the informant just shows how important it is to choose the right exhibition space, not to spoil the reputation in the artistic world. The second characteristic is the dependence on leaders. Here, of course, we look at the role of leaders as the consolidating force of the community. And here we see how differently representatives of our creative communities describe the role of their leaders. In the first case, in the kitchen, the leader is the founding father and central force of the community who holds all the people together and coordinates their activities. However, in the second case, the leader is recognized basically because he turned his leadership into his job. The third feature is emotionality, and here we look at the emotional intensiveness of the practices that we've recorded. And here we have two opposite examples of how emotions can influence communication. In the first case, in the parasite, the informant says it is very important for her to have friendly, peaceful, emotional atmosphere in the community. Whereas in the second case, the people interestingly reflect about the importance of struggle and even sometimes hatred within the members of the community. They show that such conflicts are capable of promoting new ideas. The next characteristic is reflexivity. So we look at how much people inside communities discuss their joint projects and individual initiatives. And here, of course, what to be done shows the highest level of reflexivity. As you see at the slide, people emphasize in their narratives that they're constantly reasoning, analyzing, discussing, and here is a very emotional narrative coming from one of the artists saying that you're either open to the others in discussion and open for critique, or you just, stay in your comfortable personality in this bubble of security, but in this case you never create something new. The fifth characteristic is inclusivity, and here we look at the attempts of the creative communities to engage in this case we look at the extent to which community members are all involved in the knowledge creation processes. And here we have some quotations describing the process of co-creation in the communities. In the first quotation, the leader of the art group compares their joint work to brainstorming, Whereas in the second case, the artist describes how different members of the community come and go into the creative process at different stages to share their expertise and support or criticize the others. The next characteristic is the participatory character of the communities. Here we look at how the creative communities tries to engage the others in the creation processes. And here, of course, what to be done is again a leader, because they're openly oriented towards the inclusion of local communities, neighborhoods, disadvantaged groups, and they emphasize the importance of such cooperation in their narratives. I just put another quotation on the slide to show how contrasting the situations can be, because many artists, especially from the community of Непокоренные, would repeatedly say that they don't want any participation of broader publics, because they're profane, they don't understand anything art. They want expertise coming from this narrow circle of art world. The seventh characteristic is conceptualization in the city, contextualization in the city space. Here we look at how the creation process and the communicative practices are embedded into the urban space. Here probably the Parasite shows the most intense attempt to interpret and reinterpret the city space through interventions and reappropriations of space. However, they say you have to be very careful when doing so, otherwise you can fail in your projects. And another quotation comes from What to be Done, who say how easy it was for them to organize their art events in the public space of St. Petersburg several years ago, and how really repressed and restricted the space becomes now, so that they basically feel no freedom in proceeding with their initiatives any further. They're just scared. And finally, the characteristic of contextualization in the community localization space, which means how important the locality is for the communication practices of the art groups. And here, of course, we bring the examples of communities who share the working space. One coming from Непокоренные, who openly describe the special benefits of being together, because when a gallerist comes to one artist, he or she automatically sees the works of the others, so the resources of reputation and information are accumulated here. In another case, the leader of the group also emphasizes he wanted to create the iconic atmosphere for the place, for it to be recognized and gain some reputation in the city of St. Petersburg.
And here it comes. We have 5 minutes for the most complex stuff, as usual. Okay, so here in this table we summarize the key characteristics of knowledge creating practices. Okay, that's much better. Among the communities, to which extent they are represented. We also divided them between internal and external, because in many cases these differ. In general, about this difference, it can be said that most of the communities are much more focused on internal practices of knowledge creation, as the opposite to the external ones. To put it briefly, you could have noticed that during the presentation that we had most of the interview citations from What is to be done community. And it can be easily noticed here as well, where we have this a little bit more gray than the rest part. So they have the highest values in almost every case, except the orientation towards artistic norms and values, which they don't have really much, and the contextualization in the localization space, which they don't have at all. So in most other, and yes, well, the kitchen is a little bit is similar to them in the dependence on leaders of their knowledge creation practices within the community. But again, outside the community, what is to be done also has a higher level. But I guess it would be better to switch to the next one, which just visualizes the table where we aggregated the internal and external parts for each community. So here we have the yellow one is Nepokaryanny, the purple one is Parasite, what is to be done is green, and kitchen is the red one. So here we see pretty obvious this strong orientation towards statistic norms and values in Nepokaryanny, and rather strong one in the kitchen. And of course we obviously see how what is to be done outnumbers others in the level of different dimensions of knowledge creation practices, including the dependence on leaders, emotionality, reflexivity, inclusivity, participatory level, and contextualization in the city space. So if to summarize all of it, we have like 4 different profiles of knowledge creation in these 4 communities we considered. I guess Nepokaryanny is the important thing here is that the pure artists or the true artists who position themselves as artists first of all, they have less orientation than other 2 communities towards knowledge creation and towards different aspects of practices. They are less explicit in their activities. So Nepokaryanny operates, to use this metaphor, for the scientific communities, but it's also applicable here. This ivory tower, they just work inside this ivory tower, but actually there are ivory towers within this ivory tower as well, where each of the artists is locked with himself or herself, without too much interaction and communication, and thus collaborative knowledge creation within the community as well. A bit different is the kitchen, which are a younger community, and maybe this is the reason, maybe not. But they are also very localized in their own space. They are also oriented towards statistic norms and values, but they are much more active in terms of internal interaction and knowledge creation within the community. They have these brainstorming, they have a lot of meetings. They are very, they are more emotionally entrained into their communication than Nepokaryanny, and of course they have higher level than the previous community in terms of reflexivity, inclusivity, and participatory level. So they are more like, you know, a closed circle which interacts primarily within itself, but much less with the city space. They are also, like Nepokaryanny, you can hear them saying that publics are generally profane, and it is better to have feedback from more professional audiences, and that they are a little bit afraid of interacting with publics. And we actually observed these processes when they tried to, but it was obvious they don't really often do that, and they don't really know how to do that. And as the opposite, they are much more proficient in meaning making and knowledge creating communication within the community. They know some techniques which they use, like brainstorming, which was a surprise for us. Yes, I'm almost at the end of it. So we have we also have Parasite, which actually is represent different aspects of knowledge creation practices. Interestingly, unlike any other community, but they are also they are really reflexive and inclusive, and they have rather high level, higher than the previous two level of participation, and they very actively interfere in the city space, but they don't really include publics again into their processes of knowledge creation. So unlike Kitchen, they go into the city, but they don't communicate to people. They don't try to communicate their ideas. To involve publics into interaction with the artworks and during the artworks presentation and creation. So they are like interacting with the city on their own, doing that actively, and they are also very active in communication within the group, and they are very intensely generate knowledge, but in terms of the city space, and they go outside, but they don't involve the external people. And this is very different for what is to be done, which is actually the example of not very artistic community, but creative community, no doubt. So you can just see that they are not very oriented on artistic values and norms, and they don't have spatial localization in the city space at any particular point. But they are very included in the city space in general. They actually they have built during these years a very sustainable and strong knowledge domain, which they reproduce and in which they manage to. Maybe this is the reason why they are so long-lasting, in which they manage to include the external audience, which supports them, and I think also refreshes their ideas. They very actively listen to publics, try to dialogue with publics, to listen to their opinions, to collect them, and this actually influences what they produce, their artworks they produce next, and their discourse they generate. So here it is. That's the situation we had in the research. Thank you.
Okay.